Gemini, welcome to your reading. So this is going to be your geoscope for the upcoming lunar eclipse in Capricorn, which happens on the 5th of July 2020. So generally speaking, this energy is going to last for approximately 2 weeks, and it should be seen in conjunction with the geoscope that I did for the solstice solar eclipse, because that began a cycle for us which is going to last until approximately November, and this lunar eclipse is going to close out a cycle, probably one that began around about January 2019. So just bear that in mind. This energy lasts about 2 weeks, but the solar eclipse energy lasts approximately 6 months. So this is what we're closing out. Just bear that in mind when it comes to the types of messages that are likely to come through. Right, so let's get into your reading. So Gemini, this is going to be what I'm asking from the elementals, is to tell us how what is kind of coming to a culmination or a conclusion for you at the full moon lunar eclipse, because full moons are about endings, they're about balance, and they are about sometimes things coming to light, because this is when the sun illuminates the moon, and so things that may have been hidden or unclear may now be revealed. And of course you do have Mercury retrograde in Cancer, which has a kind of lunar overtone to it, and Mercury being your ruling planet, I think your emphasis at the moment, certainly until the 12th of July, is going to be on the past, resolving and getting clarity about the past, particularly when it comes to emotions. Okay, let's cut the cards. Interesting. So here we have it, Gemini, the end of a karmic cycle. This is the south node of the moon, and of course eclipses always happen at the nodal points, because nodes are essentially the intersection of the paths of the sun and the moon. So this is the south node, which is about release, it's about endings, it's about the end of karmic contracts. Perfect for a lunar eclipse in Capricorn. So you'll really focus on that. You're ready to let something go. So fourth house, this is the kind of foundation of your chart. This is the moon in Cancer. This is populace. So populace is all about kind of group get-togethers or group think. So it can be about, kind of folklore, conventional wisdom. It can also be about getting together, groups of family getting together, because this is the fourth house of home, roots, family, and lineage. So it could be that you're viewing yourself within the kind of context of your family bloodline, of all your relatives, and kind of seeing your place within that particular, group of people. That's that sort of soul tribe. Maybe you're also keen to feel more as though you belong to a particular soul tribe, to sort of find your kind of not necessarily your ancestral home, but to reconnect. I mean, you could be reconnecting with your roots, but it could also be a sense of wanting to find your soul family. That could be kind of on your mind. Yeah, interesting, because it looks as though on some level you are detaching a little bit from a significant other. So some of your one-to-one relationships may be a little bit cool at the moment. We've got Mercury in Gemini here. This is Albus, which is white in Latin, and it's all about detachment. So I tend to see it as being very similar to the Hermit card in the tarot, where you sort of detach a little bit emotionally, you withdraw a little bit, and sometimes that's needed in one-to-one relationships, where perhaps things have got a little bit, not necessarily stale, but where there may be a stalemate, and sometimes there's this need to kind of withdraw and refill well, and perhaps kind of reorient a little bit. So I kind of feel as though on some level you are either wanting a blank slate, so a clean start with one other person, or it could be that you are withdrawing a little bit from your one-to-one connections and just having a little bit of hermit time. Yeah, interesting, because you seem very focused on your career. This is Mars in Aries. So this is puer, which means boy in Latin. So this is about new beginnings. It's about that energy of being fired up, ready to go, wanting to start fresh, lots of motivation, lots of physical energy and a kind of focus. So you're very, very focused on your career or on moving ahead with your life, which is interesting, given that you're understanding on some fundamental level that something has come to an end and you're very keen to make a fresh start. Interesting that we've got Mars having just ingressed into Aries around about the 28th of June. So, very, very recent. And of course, I think that energy will still be kind of keying into the energy of the lunar eclipse. So you are really resonating with that fiery kind of Martian energy. But let's pause it there while I do the rest of the conversions, and then we'll have a look more at how the eclipse is going to factor in to this particular reading. Hi Gemini, welcome back. As you can see, I've done all the geomantic conversions and I've put them all in their correct house position. So let's dive into this a little bit further. So the first thing to talk about, of course, is this eclipse. Now, this is going to happen across your second and your eighth houses. So for you, this is the house of Cancer and this is the house of Capricorn. So the moon will be in Capricorn, and the sun will be in Cancer. And it's interesting, we've got quite a few repeats of different geomantic figures. So we're going to kind of get into that in a bit. But it looks to me as though, the emphasis is usually on the moon at a lunar eclipse, but it is a solely lunar event. It's an event where we've got the moon and the sun on opposite sides of the earth. We are on the earth and we're being asked to balance these two polar energies. Now, of course, as a dual sign Gemini, you know all too well what that means, and you're quite used to this kind of concept. So essentially what it looks to me about is that on some level you're feeling enormous loss, and this seems to be in terms of resources. So the eighth house is about shared resources, so this can be joint income, from say some kind of joint venture, or it can be money that we inherit, it can be money we get from a divorce settlement, a court case, all that kind of thing. Sometimes it can also be bank loans. And here we've got Venus in Taurus, which is the geomantic figure, a missio anyway, is associated with transience or loss. So there does seem to have been some kind of gamble or financial joint venture that hasn't really paid off. Perhaps you thought you were going to get more money from a court case maybe than you did. Possibly you were hoping to inherit some money from a relative and it ended up being a much smaller legacy than you thought. Perhaps you got the raw end of the stick when it came to a divorce settlement, because seventh house can be divorce. But something here hasn't gone right and you're feeling a bit disgruntled about it. And then on this side, this is the house of earned income. So this is money that we tend to generate for ourselves, but it can also be personal resources, such as, for example, skills, knowledge, experience, as well as natural sort of aptitudes that we may have. And self-worth, that's the other one. And here we've got Saturn in Capricorn. So this is about not just old age pensions, but because that could be the literal interpretation of Saturn in Capricorn. But it can also be where we feel restricted. So it looks as if there hasn't been a lot of opportunity here for you to earn money. And that may, of course, have to do with, with COVID-19 and lockdown restrictions that have prevented a lot of people from working. And certainly, if we look at where Cancer is repeated in your chart, we've got it again in your fifth house. Now, the fifth house is the house of creativity, holidays, children, that kind of thing. So it could be that, for example, maybe you get money or financial support from a child, and if you've got older children, sort of grown-up children, and perhaps they haven't really been able to give you much money lately. It could be that you're in a creative industry, and so you haven't really been able to earn a living during lockdown, perhaps because it requires you to, it requires people to congregate. Say, for example, if you are an art dealer, or, you know, you're a gallery owner or something of that ilk, then, you know, it's very difficult to sort of, to kind of keep that going under restrictive circumstances. And Kase is all about restriction. It's about limitations, about roadblocks, obstacles, that kind of thing. Also, interestingly, it is also about mastery. This is Saturn in Capricorn energy, which is very stoic. So it's kind of, it's the energy of kind of emotional self-regulation, of really sort of that kind of monk-like self-discipline that we can transfer into all areas of our life, and that helps us to acquire skills, to perfect things, to get better at something. So it could be that you've been refining certain skills, and that's why you're kind of raring to go as things start to ease in terms of restrictions, you know, in the second half of the year. But certainly there seems to be a pinch on the finances, and that's something that you are desperate to end, which, I mean, let's face it, who wouldn't want to end that? It's interesting too that we've got Cauda Draconis in the third house. Now this is the house of communication, short-term travel, kind of, you know, discussions that we have with neighbors, with shopkeepers, taxi drivers, the people we commute to work with. It can also be vehicles that we use to get around our neighborhood, so like a car or a little scooter, something like that. So there also seems to be the end to a cycle here, and that may simply be that you're more able to get around now, to sort of get outside and and kind of resume communications, resume relations with other people. And of course, that may have an impact on your work situation, because we've got Veer here, which I'll come back to. So anyway, so we've got the moon in your the sun in your second house, and we've got the moon in your eighth house. Now, it's interesting because the sun here will be in the same position that Mercury was at when we had the solar eclipse. So it will be around about 14 degrees of Cancer, which means that it will be conjunct the two fixed stars that that Mercury, your planetary ruler, was conjunct at that particular solstice eclipse. So I do urge you to go and watch my IGTV video if you want to know more about those fixed stars and what they mean, because it could be very important for you, Gemini, given the link to Mercury. And of course, Mercury will still be in Cancer in your second house. It will be retrograde. It will have moved on slightly, so it'll be near to the sun, but not as close to those fixed stars or to the sun as in the previous eclipse. So there is a sense here of looking back. Perhaps you're kind of looking back and thinking, what could I have done differently? Maybe I shouldn't have turned away that offer. Not really sure, if that was the best decision when it came to spending my money. There's that kind of thing on your mind. You may also be kind of thinking, about a holiday or a lover. It's possible that you've also been restricted from them, and self-worth might be on your mind here too when it comes to solar matters. But this is very much conscious energy. So this is logical, rational, conscious type of, it's what you're aware of already. What you may not be aware of is more where the moon is. This is what's being revealed to you. And this is the moon close to the fixed star Vega, which is, I've called it the lie of Orpheus, and that's what it's kind of associated with. So it's possible that what you're starting to realize at this particular full moon lunar eclipse is that some people that you have associated with in the past may not necessarily have been the best for you. They may either have been draining, they may have been sort of on the take. They could have just had that kind of, I hate to say loser energy, because that just sounds so judgmental, but they just may have been very draining on your time, energy, and resources. And perhaps you're starting to realize that now, and that's why you are detaching a little bit from certain other people, and just sort of trying to recalibrate, because Amicio is your outcome of your reading. So I think it is making you realize perhaps, who you need to let go of in your life. And of course, I always see, this is something I talk a lot about in the Venus in Gemini video that I did back in May, you might want to revisit it because Venus is now direct and moving back through those degrees of Gemini. And again, this might be important to you, this sort of Mercury retrograde process. I think you're starting to realize that certain people may not have been in your best interest. So a missio can sometimes be a breakup, and it could be that you are walking away from certain people, particularly those people that you have some kind of contract or financial arrangement with. So it could be, as I say, a spouse. It could be a financial partner. It could be a manager, an agent, somebody who maybe gets commission from you. It could be a lawyer, an accountant, something like that. But there does seem to be a kind of a breaking up or a sense of loss here. Now, a missio can also be about self-sabotage. So it's possible that there were red flags and you kind of ignored them. But certainly I think by the end of this lunar eclipse, you're going to be very aware of, self-worth issues. We tend to attract people into our lives that drain us when we don't love ourselves enough, or when we don't value our own worth. So there's usually a link between the second and the eighth houses. So that, I think, is being highlighted for you at this particular lunar eclipse. And I think, again, this is a different reiteration of the same message. Here we've got Tristia, which is kind of heartbreak, sadness, loss, and grief. We've got it repeated in your 11th house, which is the house of friendships and social networking, as well as groups that we belong to. So it could be an association. It could be, like an art society. It could be a political group that you belong to, a charity, some kind of group affiliation. That has kind of ended in tears, and perhaps it needs to kind of end in tears because, as I say, maybe it's draining, or it's not proving to be a kind of a win-win situation, let's put it that way. And then we've got Puella, which is all about harmony in relationships. So this is Venus in Libra, so this is about peace, harmony, social kind of concordance and conviviality. So this is where we kind of, if this is the breakup card, this is the makeup card. So I kind of feel as though on some level, because we've got Puella repeated here in your 12th house, that you may also be realizing how you may have contributed to this situation yourself. And it could be, or this situation, it could be, this is the sort of masculine energy, this is the feminine energy. So it could also be that things have ended when it comes to lovers or new romantic partners, and maybe you're not keen to take things to a committed level because you're sort of realizing this isn't going anywhere. That's the other way this energy can work. So here, I think you're starting to realize how your own subconscious beliefs and psyche, your psychological state, is the key to better relationships going forward, to more harmony. So, it takes two to tango, and, it's possible that on some level you have been equally responsible for whatever's happened, here or here. And now you're starting to pivot internally and realizing what you need to do, basically, in order to get to attract more balanced and convivial types of relationships kind of moving forward, and to have more harmony and peace within existing relationships. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is Populus. We've got Populus repeated in your 9th house. So this may suggest that there's a link here between family roots where you live and foreign types of, either relatives who live overseas, or, it's possible that there's some kind of connection here with either like a sort of foreign countries or foreign customs. So that there may be an element here of, identifying with your culture or your kind of, your heritage, your cultural heritage. That's what I'm trying to say. It may be that you're kind of coming more into that, or realizing, in other words, realizing how much that can have a bearing on your whole kind of outlook, your values, and what makes you feel that you've got a solid foundation in life from which to then embark on, on new things and to be courageous as far as your future is concerned. But yes, I think this full moon is kind of saying to you, it's time to sort of put away difficult or toxic patterns in relationships, move to a happier place. And I think going forward, your focus is going to be more on career. That's why we've got puer here. That's where you feel that your energy and your time and is not wasted, that you directly benefit from whatever you put in, you get out, kind of thing. So two messages, realizing the sort of transience and where we can self-sabotage ourselves when it comes to relationships, letting go of those old patterns that sort of end in tears, moving to a place of happier types of relating, and then also pressing forward with your new career. And I think this will start to happen more once this energy is cleared. So once we get past this particular lunar cycle, you've cleared it out, I think your focus will be more on this energy going forward. So this, I think, will key into the energy of the solar eclipse that lasts for 6 months. So out with the old, in with the new, but first, a little bit of processing to do. So I hope that's been helpful, Gemini. Do leave me a comment if it's resonated. I'd love it if you would like, subscribe or share, and I'll catch you again in a couple of weeks when I do my geoscope for the upcoming new moon.